Hey friends, Kathryn Korostoff here from Research Rockstar. Thanks for joining me today for another conversation for Research Rockstars. Today we're going to talk about data, as usual, but today we're going to talk about qualitative data to be specific. So let me ask you a question. What market research method can we use to discover customer attitudes and perceptions? There are a lot of cases where that's important to us these days. A lot of brands want to understand what consumers perceive about their brand or their competitors, or they want to know what kind of perceptions people have about their product. Do they perceive our product as high quality, low quality, etc.? Understanding customer attitudes and perceptions is a really important theme for a lot of marketers today. So, what market research method can we use? Well, there are a lot of different qualitative research methods that could fit this, but when we're really trying to discover, we are talking about qualitative research for the most part. Can you do quantitative research and discover things? Yeah, absolutely. But in most cases, we do find that if we're really looking for original discovery, we need to do qualitative research, very unstructured research, so that we can hear people talk in their own words, using their own phrases, their own jargon, to really understand and discover their attitudes and perceptions about brands and products. If we go straight to quantitative research, well, in quantitative research these days, we're primarily using questionnaires, and that means we're asking questions. So if we don't ask the right questions in a survey, then we are at risk of not discovering all of the relevant attitudes and perceptions. So qualitative research gives us a lot less structure, and in this case, when it comes to discovery, that's good. So there are a number of different qualitative research methods that we use in market research these days. We can do in-depth interviews, we can do social media listening, we can do ideation exercises, and amongst others, and of course, focus groups. Now, I know some people these days are a little bit cynical about focus groups. They seem very old school. But focus groups have changed a lot over the last 10 years. First of all, we can do either traditional in-person focus groups, or we can do online focus groups. We can do online focus groups that are either text-based or video-based. We can also do focus groups in traditional focus group facilities, but that have a warmer or more casual feel. If you haven't been to a focus group facility in the last 10 years, you may not know this, but several of them now have setups that feel more like living rooms and comfortable spaces where people can be more conversational as opposed to sitting around a big giant table. So there are a lot of things that have evolved in focus groups in recent years. So let's talk a little bit about focus groups, because like with any other research methodology, it can be done very poorly and it can be done with excellence. So what makes an excellent focus group? Well, there are a few things that I look for. So one of the things is I need to make sure that I've got really well qualified participants. Not only does this make sure that I'll be able to meet my client's objectives, whatever the objectives are for this specific project, but it's really important that I make sure that the people who are in the room are going to be comfortable. Because people aren't going to talk. They're not going to share at a really deep level if they're in with other people who make them uncomfortable. And the brutal reality is that people are more likely to reveal, they're more likely to share their really true, candid attitudes, perceptions, emotional associations when they realize they have something in common with the other people in the room. And that can be a lot of things. Maybe it's just, hey, we all own the same brand of car, and that becomes a bond. Or we all go to the same kind of university. That becomes a bond. Or we are all working parents. That becomes a bond. So we need to make sure that we screen in people to participate in our focus groups who are not only qualified given the project objectives, but so that they recognize something in each other that makes them comfortable and happy to share. That's a true key requirement for having an excellent focus group experience. Of course, your moderator is really important too. And I'm biased, but I do believe that the best moderators I've worked with are trained moderators. Somebody who's a good conversationalist is not necessarily going to be a good moderator. There are a lot of tricks to the trade. A great moderator is going to be able to activate conversations that reveal diverse opinions and attitudes. And that phrase, diverse, is really important, because one of the things that can really make a focus group go bad is when there is a dominant respondent who sets the tone and everybody just parrots what they say. They don't feel comfortable saying, well, my opinion is different. That can be a hard thing. So a good moderator is somebody who can not only get people talking in a really candid way, but who can really include all of the diverse opinions and attitudes that may be in that room. And again, these days that room could be a physical space or an online space. How else do I know if I have a great focus group? My observers are inspired and re-energized. I've had this happen many times. I personally have moderated hundreds of focus groups, and I've also seen a lot of other awesome moderators do their work. And one of the things that happens in a focus group, and whether this is online or in person, is there are observers. Online, the observer is watching online, if you will. In person, the observers are behind those not so cleverly disguised one-way mirrors, right? So if we take the example of an in-person focus group and you've got those people who are behind the glass watching the group, I know I have an amazing focus group when those observers are totally energized, when they're getting excited about what they're hearing, when what they're hearing is inspiring new ideas for marketing or product development. And I've had this happen many times. In fact, I had an experience once where we happened to be doing the focus groups close to the client's location. This was a high-tech company that makes, it was actually a B2B study, so business to business. So the client is a manufacturer of networking equipment, and our focus group was held near their facility, just that was one of our several locations we did our focus groups. But because it was near their facility, they invited some of their engineers to attend, because engineers don't always get a chance to see clients, to hear clients talk in their own language. I thought it was a great idea. So we ended up with about 10 engineers actually attending the focus group. They got so excited during the focus group talking to each other, I actually had to get up from the room where I was moderating and go back to the observation area and ask them to keep their voices down, because they were talking so loudly and excitedly, the participants could hear them. But that was awesome because I knew that I was inspiring them. By listening to their clients talk in a very authentic, candid way, they were discovering things that were extremely authentic, that were really inspiring to them. And then I knew I had a great focus group. Of course, there are a couple more things we need to know and have in order to conclude that we've had a successful and awesome focus group experience. And one of those things is we need to make sure that the research team actually uses the focus group results to write an amazing objective report. And when I say objective, I'm using that word really purposefully, because I've seen a lot of, frankly, really shabby focus group reports. These are the focus group reports that are typically written after a moderator has, say, done 2 or 3 focus groups, and they're flying back home and they decide to bang out the report on the airplane on the way home, or something functionally equivalent to that. So what's the problem with a moderator who's just done a few focus groups writing the report on the airplane on the ride back? Well, they're probably relying on recall. They don't have their transcripts yet. They haven't watched the videos yet, so they're relying on their own personal recall. And here's the problem. All humans have biases. If we only rely on recall, we are absolutely not going to be able to write a truly objective report. So there are a few things that we can do in research to make sure that the research report is going to be written in a really comprehensive and well synthesized and objective way. And one of them is to make sure that we don't write that report based 100% on our own inherently flawed human recall. But we need to make sure that for a project to be truly excellent, that report is objective, that it's really synthesized, and always, always, always make sure that it is clearly addressing the original objectives for the project. Sometimes I see researchers write reports that are sort of a data dump, and while some of that can be interesting, remember that somebody paid for these focus groups to meet specific objectives, so we need to make it really easy for them to see, okay, for objective A, here were the relevant results. For objective B, here were the relevant results. If the client has to work hard to figure that out, then the report is a failure, and so is the research project. And finally, and this is related, at the end of the project, does the client feel that the project objectives were adequately met? Were the conversations truly aligned with the research objectives? Did we delve into it? Did we get past surface information to really peel the onion and get at the heart of those objectives? If the client feels that the objectives were ultimately met, then you have a great research study. So yes, there are poor research studies and great research studies of any kind, and it applies to focus groups as well. But there are a lot of things that we know now about human behavior and how to optimize focus groups to really make sure that they are done with excellence. But there is something we have to be extra vigilant about these days with focus groups. If you go to your favorite search engine and you enter the phrase focus group, see what happens. The first page of matches are all about make money from home, participate in focus groups, it's easy money. As a market research professional, that makes me very uncomfortable. There are a lot of sites that are recruiting people for focus groups that are really, enticing people to do it because it's easy money. And while that doesn't mean that those people will be bad focus group participants and that they won't be qualified, it does make me nervous that people are basically being encouraged to participate in focus groups for money. And I have absolutely seen cases where I realized that participants must have been dishonest during the screening process in order to qualify for that focus group. So we need to make sure that we're really vigilant about our screening process so that we get awesome participants. It's a real garbage in, garbage out kinds of things, which is why I'm always concerned when I'm teaching other folks about how to do focus groups with excellence that we spend a lot of time about how to write a great screener. So screener is the document that we use whether we're doing in-person or online focus groups to screen people in. And sometimes screeners are administered by phone and sometimes they're administered as a short online survey, although very often when you screen using an online survey, you will do a follow-up by phone just to confirm and make sure that that participant is truly authentic. Now, if we focus on consumer research for a minute as opposed to B2B research, if we look at consumer research, there are a lot of items that we typically will see in a screener. These are some of the items you might see. Now, it is important that your screener isn't too long. That is, you don't want to ask somebody 15 questions and then tell them that they don't qualify for a project, especially if you're doing research with your own customer base, because that becomes a very negative experience, right? Nobody wants to take time to answer 15 questions only to find out they didn't qualify, right? So we really try to keep it to 5 to 7 questions. Also, frankly, if your screener has 10 items in it, you may be over screening and as a result skewing your results. So typically for consumer research, you're going to pick 5 to 7 of the following items: age range, education level, gender, household income, employment status, products or brands that the person uses, the person's role in purchase process, and geography. Those are very, very common items. Are there other items? Yes. And you'll see different items are going to be relevant to different product categories. Like if I'm doing focus groups relating to automobiles, I may have a screening item about how much they drive. Their driving distances, how many miles you drive a week or something like that. But generally, these are the types of the criteria that we're going to have. Now, there are a couple of important distinctions we need to talk about, because traditional demographic items have shifted a lot in recent years. For example, when we ask about gender, depending on your product category or topic, you might want to offer a other or prefer not to say option. You may want to be, thinking about different, ways that people want to, check a box to indicate their gender, right? So things have changed in recent years, and we need to be aware of that. Otherwise, frankly, we look ignorant, and also we may not be giving people an opportunity to screen in correctly. Also, employment status has changed a lot in recent years. In the olden days, we used to simply ask, are you employed or you're not employed, basically. But now we have a lot of people who are employed full-time, employed part-time, self-employed, etc. So sometimes you want to think about, for this particular study, do I care whether or not they work full-time, or am I just trying to understand whether or not they have any income from an employment situation? For example, there are projects I've seen recently where the target market included people who may work full time, but for multiple employers because they may have a part-time, quote, traditional job, but they also work 20 or more hours a week in the so-called gig economy, driving for rideshare services, that sort of thing. So employment can be real tricky. So yes, employment status can often be a screening criteria, but make sure you're asking your employment status question in a way that's going to be relevant to your topic. Geography also can be really important. Obviously, if you're doing online focus groups, geography can be quite diverse. But even if you're doing in-person focus groups, we can be looking at not only geography in terms of a specific town or city, but where that person lives. Are they in the urban area of that location? Are they more in the suburban area? Are they more in a rural outlying area? So again, geography can also mean a few different things, and we want to be super precise. But we do need to make sure we ask the right questions to make sure that we get people who are truly qualified. So let's walk through an example of what that looks like just so that we're clear about this. So let's imagine a hypothetical situation where we have a friend, or her name is Emma, and she's the customer insights analyst for a woman's health magazine called Fabulous Over 50, a purely hypothetical magazine. Now, the magazine's tagline is celebrating fabulously fit women over 50. She's planning to do focus groups to discover current hot topics and trends, and she wants to use that information to inform their editorial calendar and advertising targets. So, what screening items should she consider for her focus groups? Well, there are two screening criteria that are really obvious, right? First of all, gender. Clearly, she wants women. And age. Clearly, she wants people over 50. But what else might she want? Well, in this case, she might want to have a screening criteria about exercise. Does she want people who exercise at least once a week? Does she want people who exercise at least 3 times a week? Maybe she wants to make sure that she gets people into her focus groups who participate in diverse exercise activities. In that case, she might want to say, well, I want to have a quota requirement. I want 20% to be runners. I want 20% to be walkers. I want 20% to be yoga enthusiasts, and so on. So there could be a few different ways that she gets at activity level. Although in this case, I would also caution not to go too far. That is, it's very possible that a magazine read by women over 50 who care about fitness includes an audience of people who aspire to fitness but don't necessarily participate currently. So we need to make sure she doesn't overscreen and end up really targeting only people who are the most enthusiastic exercisers who exercise frequently. What else might she have here as a screening criteria? Well, it's a magazine. Sounds like part of her business model is selling advertising because she wants to understand hot topics to inform her advertising targets. So she probably wants to have a minimum household income. She may want to say to her potential advertisers, yes, our research was done with readers or women who exercise to find out about their topics, and we focused on women who have a certain minimum household income. They have to have a household income of at least $40,000 a year to qualify. So again, given what her objective is, there may be a household income screening criteria. Now, here's an important tip. Whenever we're doing research, it's good to know something about what exists in reality. So, for example, how many women are in the United States, let's just imagine we're doing research in the United States, who have a certain level of income or who have a certain employment status, so that we make sure that we're screening people in for our focus groups that reflect reality, not just a very narrow population, but let's make sure we're getting a bit of diversity. Let's make sure we're getting some reality. So a really great tip here is to use the Department of Labor statistics. So for example, maybe Emma decides, gosh, I think I'm going to look to see employment status for women over 50, because maybe I should have a requirement that at least half of our participants are women who are interested in exercise, are over 50, and who have a job, who are employed. And so she might want to go over to the Bureau of Labor Statistics to find out, just in general in the United States, what percent of women over 50 are employed. And while that is going to vary somewhat by education level, actually, if you look at, I believe it's roughly the 50 to 65 range, about 50% of women over 50 are in fact employed in the United States. So that's a very rough percentage because, again, it does vary by geography and education level. But that might inform her decision to have a screener where she says, you know what, I do want to make sure that at least half of my population are employed, either part-time or full-time. So if you ever feel like you need to make sure that your screener is screening in for reality, and you're doing consumer research, definitely check census data or the Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor, the United States Department of Labor, has a lot of different resources, a lot of different data and statistics. For example, you can look at in their Women's Bureau, so specifically the Department of Labor's data related to women in the workforce. They have a lot of great data about participation in the labor force by age, by gender, by educational level, and by parent status, whether or not they have children. So again, the Department of Labor has some amazing free statistics that are very easy to access. I hope that was a great example of how we can make sure that focus groups are awesome. We talked about what makes for great focus groups, and of course, starting with making sure that you've got amazing participants is a key step in the process, and that means having a screener that doesn't overscreen and isn't going to turn people off, but is going to make sure that the people in your groups are truly qualified and aligned with the project objectives. If you're interested in learning more about managing focus group projects, please do join us for our focus group project management class. We actually have a class coming up in January of 2018, and this course is taught 3 times a year. I happen to personally be the instructor for this particular course, so if you'd like to learn more about that course, please check it out. It's again called Focus Group Project Management. And for other articles and free resources, please visit researchrockstar.com. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed this either as a YouTube video or as an iTunes podcast, please do like us and subscribe. Please follow me at Research Rocks, or you can also contact me via the Research Rockstar website or by email. And if you have any questions, again, please don't be shy, post them here. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.